Peace Corps will talk a lot about PACA, and that's, I'm sure you know, participatory community analysis. And it's really important. I think it's probably the most important thing that you'll do during your service. If you don't take the time to do that and do it right, you're going to miss a lot. And it's also what sets Peace Corps apart from a lot of different NGOs. What you're trying to do is help a community determine their own goals for their own future. And if they're not realizing their own vision for their future, if you find that you're making a lot of decisions on projects, it's probably not going to be sustainable when you leave. So when I got to Manda, we got that process rolling. We had meetings with 5 different women's groups. We found that women wanted to earn a little bit more money with the buying and selling that they were doing. Most women in Manda buy produce and then sell it for a profit on the crossroads. And during the process of our meetings, they said the most important thing to them is to increase their earnings. At the same time, I was doing a community baseline survey with a community health volunteer. And we were finding that there were a disproportionately high number of malnourished children in the community. So one of the things that came out of these meetings is that the women said it doesn't do us any good to know about nutrition if we don't have access to vegetables and if we don't have the sort of money to provide that nutrition for our children. So what came out of the meetings is we decided to have garden trainings with leaders of the women's groups. Hopefully at the end of it, having different community gardens with each group. And what you're going to get is better access to nutritious foods, and you're going to be cutting out the middlemen. You're going to be increasing your earnings by selling the produce directly. In Peace Corps, what you're going to find is there are things that you control, and you can take your time to become a well-integrated volunteer. They've said that to you plenty of times there in Chaz, and it's absolutely true. It can be difficult to earn the trust of people and really build up long-lasting interpersonal relationships. And it might mean getting projects off a little bit later than you had anticipated. But it's one of the few things that you can control, and it's one of the things that's going to pay off no matter what you do. There's also things that you can't control. You're living in a village. You are dealing with people that have built up relationships over decades with one another, and some are going to get along, some of them aren't. A lot of this is going to come to head in political decisions, especially when you do group meetings. There's going to be things going behind the scenes that you could be there in the village for 10 years, you're never going to know what's going on. It might feel like this all falls on you, and as Americans, we're very driven on output. If we don't output, we fail. I think it helps to get a little bit of perspective and realize that really this comes down to your community and their decisions. As long as you're doing the training and as long as you're helping them make their own decisions, the outcome you might not realize it in your 2 years, but it will come about. So what happened with the community gardens? I organized a 2-day training. We got representatives from each women's group to get together. And over 2 days, instead of just telling them what to do, we had them actually build a compost pile. We had them practice companion planting. We had them do double digging processes. Everything from the moringa of intensive beds to sort of a little bit more academic but really applicable things like what do you and don't you add as inputs to a garden. Everything went well. We had a ceremony at the end. An older volunteer, I was fairly new at the time, she came in and helped with a nice speech. Annika Webster was great for that. And at the end of it, everyone was excited. The women's groups were going to go out and we were going to pick a garden for each of the 5 major neighborhoods. Everyone was on board. So later on, I traveled to each neighborhood and we picked out places that we thought would work. And the first snag that we ran into is that because of all the animals, you'll run into this soon, because of all the animals, you need this fenced in. And the women said that they couldn't fence, that was the men's job, and the men were refusing to fence things in. Also, no one had the materials for fencing. We had huge problems with water. In my village, our water table is as deep as the deepest water tables in Senegal. And while people do have access to water and there's enough water in their wells, very difficult to pull that out and to spread that over a commercial-sized garden or even some personal garden.